After over 3 years since it was first announced, Phantasialand's new record-breaking roller coaster F.L.Y is finally open, so is it worth the wait? Let's find out. I'm Rollercoaster David, and this is my review of F.L.Y at Phantasialand. The new steampunk-themed Rookburgh area, which F.L.Y is built in, looks absolutely stunning, and the ride twists in and out of lots of different bits of scenery and tunnels, meaning it's actually quite tricky to follow it when you watch it off-ride. To help you understand the layout, let's go through it bit by bit. The ride starts in a beautiful station that continues the steampunk theme with some nice props and some fantastic lighting effects. Unfortunately, no cameras are allowed in that part of the ride, so you'll have to take my word for it, but the way in which the wall lighting shifts from blue to orange in time with the train's movement as it rolls in and out of the station, and the way the lights flicker and dim as the train first moves, really helps immerse you in the setting. F.L.Y loads passengers with seats in a vertical position, and you leave the station moving sideways through a bit of a dark ride section. This isn't particularly long, but it's well themed and has some nice effects, with light panels showing steampunk advertisements that seem to float in mid-air. You then go up a small lift hill, passing a large video screen that uses some interesting parallax effects to make it appear like you're looking out of a large window at the industrial scenery of Rookburgh. At the top of the lift hill, the seats and track rotate so you're in the flying position facing forwards as you continue into the ride's first rolling launch. The launch itself is decent, although not incredibly fast or powerful. It sends you into a large overbank before you go through the first inversion, which feels a bit like a zero-G roll. After you go through the inversion, you fly over the launch track and into a long sweeping 180-degree turn that leads into a small hill back over the launch track. After you go over this hill, you dive down into an alleyway in a tight turn, and as you exit, you're hit by a blast of smoke before you dip under the launch track and continue. Next up is another bank turn that transitions into a slight S-curve that then leads into a diving right-hand turn before you level out and hit the second launch, which is entirely underground. This launch accelerates you to the ride's top speed before you pull upwards and crest a hill that provides some nice airtime if you're sat near the front. Next, you dive into a spiralling left turn that transitions into a high overbanked right turn before you dip back under the original launch track. You then pull slightly upwards and twist to dive into a left-hand turn through a tunnel, which gives a great ground rush effect. As you approach the ride's finale, you enter a long right-handed helix over water, then dip through a tunnel into the ride's second inversion, which feels like a corkscrew. After this, you do a left-hand turn past some jets of water into an S-curve transition and hit the brakes. The track then twists and the seats rotate back into the upright position as you roll into the unload station and the ride ends. It's a pretty substantial ride, with a ride time of about 1.5 minutes, but what does it feel like to ride? Well, there's good points and there's bad points. Starting with the good, the theming and scenery is simply amazing, and the world of Rookburgh that Phantasialand has crafted is one of the most detailed areas you'll find in any park worldwide. One thing I particularly like is that the immersion in this world is sustained for nearly the entire ride, as due to the flying position restricting your field of view, and a well-crafted layout, you never see any other areas of the park whilst riding. The park's headline coaster Taron is a fantastic ride, but its immersion is rudely broken after the second launch, where you reach the highest point and you can see out over other areas of the park and the surrounding roads and countryside. This doesn't happen on F.L.Y, and from the moment you enter the Rookburgh area till the moment you leave it, you're completely immersed in this world of scenery and theming. The ride also has some lovely artwork and details that you fly past, and it's designed with most of the track being close to the ground or other buildings, which really adds to the sensation of speed you get as you zoom by. I also really enjoyed the second launch, and whilst it's not as impressive as Taron's, it still gets your adrenaline going as you accelerate through an underground tunnel. Unfortunately, a lot of the other parts of the ride were less enjoyable though. The ride actually has a lot more positive G than I was expecting, and this is something that's not great on flying coasters. On normal sit-down coasters, positive G is felt like you're being pushed down into your seat, but on flying coasters, it's like being pushed down onto your stomach or torso, or whichever part of your body is being supported by the restraints. This just isn't very comfortable, and most other flying coasters try to avoid sustained positive G-force for this reason. Positive G can be fine on flying coasters if it's well paced and broken up with negative G sections or inversions, but for me, far too much of Fly is spent being squished into the restraint for a sustained period of time. I enjoy positive G on normal sit-down roller coasters. After all, Intimidator 305 used to be my #1 coaster, and it's infamous for making people grey out in its first turn, but positive G-force just isn't comfortable on a flying coaster. It was during one ride that I was being squished into the restraint in that way that I realised something. I think Fly would be a much more enjoyable and better ride if it wasn't a flying coaster, and instead was a suspended thrill coaster like Halzuber-Koff at Tripsdrill. The thing is, the positive G-force would be much more comfortable in the upright seated position, but more crucially, it doesn't do any manoeuvres that wouldn't be possible in a normal coaster to justify it being a flying coaster. For sake of comparison, my favourite flying coaster is the Flying Dinosaur at Universal Studios Japan, and straight after the first drop, it starts to do things that can only be pulled off in a flying coaster or a 4D coaster. The first sequence of elements is a 0G roll that leads into a Raven turn, then a pretzel loop, and both of those elements are impossible on any other kind of coaster, as the G-forces involved would just be intolerable. Fly, on the other hand, has none of those manoeuvres, and consists of bank turns, dives and rolls, all of which can be easily done in an inverted coaster. The flying position is inherently less comfortable to ride than other coasters, and as such, they should do unique things to justify this, and Fly just simply doesn't. It's still a coaster that's worth riding, but it's probably one you won't be marathoning all day, as it's just too uncomfortable once the novelty is worn off. I will add a caveat here though, which is that I rode Fly during its soft opening period, and it's possible that the ride could be tweaked by lowering the launch speed or adding trims to reduce the excessive G-force, but as it stands now, it's really not one of my favourite coasters. I still think that everyone should give it a go at least once though, and even if you don't like it, Phantasialand has many other fantastic coasters that you'll love, and I'd happily spend a day going between Taron, Black Mamba and Colorado, but Fly just isn't on the same level of fun as those. Let me know in the comments what you think about this coaster, and if you'd like to ride it, and if you've enjoyed this video, why not check out some of the other ones I've posted. I've been Rollercoaster David, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again in another video very soon.